Hey, everybody, welcome back to Better Humanhood. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, we are talking about early part of the 2020 election cycle because now we do these things for over a year and a half. Isn't it fucking terrible? Ha! We're going to talk a little bit about today about being honest with yourself about where you come from. We're going to talk about siding intellectually rather than emotionally. We're going to talk about being on Team People and Team America instead of Team Democrat or Team Republican or Team Green or Team Libertarian, whatever you're on. We're going to talk about how to talk to people. We're going to talk about how to listen to people. Those are two things that I think we've lost in the last few years. And I don't think that's a new thing. I think it's just, where there's been a long, slow spiral. I want to tell you where I see myself standing politically. First, I lean anti-establishment. I assume that whoever's in power currently is screwing us for whatever reason they're screwing us. I think it's a big problem in our de facto two-party system. It's one that we've got a majority rules side, and that majority rules until they get too cocky and we pick the other side, and then they get too cocky and we go back. And in that way, we kind of self-perpetuate the system, and we don't make a lot of progress. Our progress is largely incremental, and then a lot of any progress that gets made gets undone. Just in our lifetimes, I was born in 1976, which means that I was coming of age in the, at least politically, in the late 80s, early 90s. 1992, we saw that swing of power after 8 years of Reagan and 4 years of Bush. We saw it again in 2000 after 8 years of Clinton. We saw it again in 2008 after 8 years of George W. Bush. We saw it in 2016 after 8 years of Obama. And it was just back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And everybody just tries to undo some of what the last guy did and then try to do something of their own. And they try to put it in a way that maybe can't undone, but it always does get undone. And I'd say it's a little like a roller coaster, but no, it's more like tennis. It's just over there and over there, and we try to move the next guy, just a little further over into the corner so that we can hit one up the line. Hope to get it by him eventually. I tend to lean, like I said, anti-establishment, but I lean toward the kinder side, which currently is Democratic. I think in the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, that was the Republican Party. The party of my favorite president, Teddy Roosevelt. And people always point to Abe Lincoln as being a Republican who freed the slaves, and then sometime after Teddy Roosevelt, the party switched, and Franklin Roosevelt, who created the New Deal, pulled us out of the Depression. He was a Democrat, so we had Teddy Roosevelt on the one hand, kind of inventing the park system, and then Franklin, bolstering it in an effort to put people back to work. I think that governments have five primary responsibilities, and our government in particular. Here are the five in order of priority. One, protect us from foreign governments and actors. I think that's a function of uh, every government, right? Even we have a republic here. India's democracy, and there are dictatorships around the world, and there are other forms of representative government, but the biggest thing that governments do is protect us from other countries, right? Invading armies. They protect us from individuals from other countries coming in to cause problems. Second thing is governments should protect us from themselves. So that means to me that the government shouldn't be too over present in our lives. They shouldn't be working to catch us. Sometime in the 60s during the Nixon administration, police forces started doing things like enforcing speed limits, uh, whereas that was a separate kind of traffic division. It wasn't. I'm trying to catch you doing something wrong. It was, police were there for public safety, but Nixon hated hippies and he hated black people, and he kind of weaponized police forces across the country, and we're I think we've tried to soften that a little bit today. I tell you, I did a ride along. It's been a while, about 15, 16 years ago now. I did a ride along with a police officer in Holyoke, Massachusetts. And man, it was a mixed day. But the people we caught doing things wrong were really doing things wrong. We were catching kids who were shooting air gun. It turned out to be an air gun out the window of their van. Uh, they weren't actually hurting anybody, but nobody knew that. We stopped into a couple of shops just to, show the presence and all that stuff, and just to say, hey, how you doing? But it was a busy day. We had a couple of bad accidents, that kind of thing too. So it was wound up being a largely protect day, but I don't know about you. I ease up on the gas pedal when I drive by a cop on the highway. And that's not what they're designed for. That's not what police forces should do. They shouldn't instill fear in us that we're doing something wrong, right? Similarly, our laws shouldn't overstep such that the government is super into our lives. And that ostensibly is what the courts are for, is to say, hey, government, you went too far this time. Might be one of the problems with politicizing judgeships, and especially with lifetime appointments. Third thing, the government should protect us from its businesses. Yes, I am a capitalist. Yes, I hope to be making money from this someday, but I do think businesses need to be regulated. Unfettered capitalism is not healthy. It's how you get monopolies. It's also how you get Honeywell dumping toxic waste into rivers and lakes in the 70s. It's how we wind up with super bad smog in California, New York in the 80s. We need to put some regulations in place, and that's government's job. Next thing governments should do is protect us from other individuals. That's why we have laws against things like murder and assault and robbery. And finally, the last thing I think governments are responsible for is taking care of us. And one way, of course, is things like roads and public safety. Yeah, if you are worried about things like socialism, those are social programs. That is socialism. You know, our economic system has always been a combination of things for the social good and capitalism. Yeah, it's something that it's something that even Ben Franklin, before the founding of the country, before the U.S. was really a nation, before the Declaration of Independence, one thing he wanted was he had everybody in the community chip in some money to help clean up the roads and pave the streets and uh, support a volunteer fire department. And the department still needed equipment even if the people were volunteers. And now we're in a situation where we can do more things. uh, the Forsyth Farmers Market here has a government grant to double food stamps. So you go there with your EBT card and you ask for $15 worth of farmers market tokens. They'll give you 30. That's not to say that there aren't people taking advantage of that system. It's not to say that there aren't fraudulent cases, but I think that in cases like food stamps, in cases like other welfare programs, Medicaid, Medicare, that kind of thing, healthcare, no, it's not a right, but aren't we better when we all have it? If we're going to be on team people, if we're going to be on team America, then we're better when everybody's lifted up. There's not a finite amount of awesome in the world, as I like to say. And we, yeah, other people doing better does not mean you have to do worse. Okay, if you have a candle and I have a candle, my candle's lit, and I pass some flame onto you, now we just both have lit candles. Like, you didn't steal flame from me. Like my candle's not dimmer because yours is brighter. So I think we're all better when we're all doing well. Here's what's not on that list: to protect us from ourselves. And this is where kind of my libertarian instincts kick in. I don't think you should sit at home and do heroin, but I don't think the government should be able to tell you you can't. If you go out and you rob somebody because you need money for heroin, that's where the government steps in. That's back when I said, protect us from other people. If you're going to sit home, get drunk, that's fine. Go ahead. Don't go out and drive. That's where you're affecting other people. So I don't think most people should go out and get abortions, but I don't think the government should tell you you can't. Yeah, it's just smaller government, I think, is better. The less government involvement in our lives, I think, the better we are as people, the more opportunity we have to grow as people. When people aren't looking over your shoulder. So in terms of honesty and kind of thinking with your head and not your heart, and being on team you and team people and team America instead of team D or team R or team I or team L, wherever you think you line up, I want you to do this when you're thinking about who you might vote for as primary season hits us. And I think there might be a Republican primary this time around. I know it doesn't often happen with sitting presidents, but John Kasich has been thinking about it, and Bill Weld has been thinking about it. Once you go over to isidewith.com, fill out as many questions as you have the time and the energy for, and they will give you a list of candidates and the percentages that you kind of agree with them. And I'm going to read you mine. Amy Klobuchar, 79%, Beto O'Rourke, 76%, Cory Booker, 75%, Tulsi Gabbard and Julian Castro, 74%, Bernie Sanders, 73%, Elizabeth Warren and Kirsten Gillibrand, 72%, Pete Buttigieg, 71%, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, 70%. As I realize Joe Biden at this recording has not yet announced. John Delaney and Andrew Yang, 65%. John Kasich, 45%. Donald Trump, 41%. Now, two lessons I learned from this. One is that I'm about 3/4 in with a lot of the Democratic candidates, which says to me that there isn't that much difference. People aren't going off scripts. People are, roughly, people in that camp are roughly in the same camp. They're roughly aligned with each other. I think that after that measure, that's when you wind up having the discussion, right? Where you start thinking with your heart. I think Bernie Sanders is going to be too old. I don't think Elizabeth Warren can beat Donald Trump straight up in an election. I don't think that, and I could be wrong here, but Kamala Harris's history as a prosecutor seems to be different from her words. And I don't know if you can hear the baby, but I can. And I think we're going to put this on pause. So especially if you're watching the video, this is going to be a disruption. We'll be able to chop this out of the audio. Now, I will apologize for that break. It's going to happen throughout the course of this podcast. We do have a baby at home. Hopefully that will appear seamless on the audio. I am not that good a video editor yet, but I'm getting there. In fact, if you're watching the video, you do see me occasionally grab a sip of water or coffee. There's my slurp for the episode. Anyway, we're talking about Kamala Harris. Her record as prosecutor speaks a little differently than where she kind of stands on the issues on the campaign trail. I know she had to follow California law when she was doing that, so we'll see. Beto O'Rourke didn't fare great in his Senate run against Ted Cruz, but I guess nobody was expecting him to win in Texas. So, that kind of thing. The other thing that taking this I side with quiz taught me was, look, I'm over 40% in with somebody like Donald Trump, somebody like John Kasich. So even those people we think we're diametrically opposed to, there's definitely a place to meet people halfway if you talk to them and want to meet them halfway. I want to talk briefly about the Democratic Party and the way that the Tea Party kind of broke up the Republican caucus a few years ago and made people pay attention and kind of form coalitions. And that's something that a two-party system doesn't have to do, but you kind of have to within your own party. And we're starting to see that split in the Democratic Party. If you look at, some of the young blood coming in, if you look at Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, if you look at Ilhan Omar, I'm not saying that I agree with a lot of stuff they're saying necessarily. It's just that it's good that there's a diversity of viewpoints. One candidate who you may have heard on that list, you might not recognize, is Andrew Yang. And he's very interesting to me. Like a lot of people, I first heard him on Joe Rogan's podcast. He is a businessman, like the president. His business venture for America. He's launched businesses in many cities across the country, that kind of thing. But he's real interested in future work. And he's rebranded the universal basic income to the freedom dividend. He wants to give everybody $1,000 a month. And, a lot of people are opposed to that just because it's not a perfect solution, but, it is a step along the way. People wonder where the money comes from. Well, we're already spending about half to 2/3 of it. Because if you're on food stamps, if you're getting some, state child support or something, if you're already taking some money from the federal government, this would not be in addition to that. If you're taking $1,200, you would still get $1,200, but not an additional $1,000. If you were taking $800, it would go up to $1,000, that kind of thing. And what this would do is, it'll spur investment. People like me will pay off our cars faster and, probably buy more property. People who are renting their homes will buy faster. People who are leasing their cars might buy cars. There will be kind of more ownership in the country. And then, when you get down to the poorest, it'll cover some food. It'll cover, utility bills. It might cover rent on a $400 place, a $500, $600 a month place, that kind of thing. And the reason we're going to need this going forward is we are not too far off from having a new work future. If you want to see where the workplace is going, look at two places. Look at your doctor's office and look at the grocery store. So I don't know about you, but 2 days before a week before I have an appointment at the doctor's office, I get an email. Hey, don't forget you get a doctor's appointment next week. It doesn't come from a human. It comes from a machine. 2 days before I get a call, and it doesn't come from a person. It comes from a machine. If I have any questions, that machine instructs me to call the office. If I call the office, I'm often on hold for 20 minutes because there are just not enough people there because machines handle most of the incoming calls. They don't need the people. Go to the grocery store. You used to have, 10 lanes, with a cashier and a bagger at each and a couple of managers up front. Now you have 1 or 2 lanes with a cashier and a bagger, and then you've got one person at each of the self-checkout stations. So I go to the grocery store and there's one person for 5 self-checkouts on one end, one person for 6 self-checkouts on the other end, and then you've got one person handling an express lane by themselves, and then you've got a cashier and a bagger on a lane helping people with full carts. That's it. It used to be 25 people up front. Now it's 5. There might be a manager in front as well instead of 3 directing traffic and helping with overrides and that kind of thing. Yeah, I don't know if you've called your bank lately, but not only is it an artificial intelligence phone tree, it speaks naturally and can hear you naturally. You used to have to dictate clearly. You used to have to speak like this in order for those machines to understand you. And now you can just speak normally. And I have a fairly neutral accent in my normal speaking voice. I will often slip into a bit of a drawl because I'm around it so much. You can tell that I haven't left the house very often lately, that I've been mainly talking to a young child, because I have stopped rounding my vowels this week. Yeah, I don't have the Boston accent that I grew up in a house with. But the AI can pick those up as well. You don't have people with a distinct speech pattern don't have to change their speech pattern for the machines anymore. So that's what Andrew Yang's interested in. That's why he thinks the universal basic income, with the freedom dividend, as he puts it, is going to be important. You've got a lot of people who are going to suddenly find themselves without jobs, and he points at transportation, shipping. There are going to be a lot of self-driving trucks on the road soon. Over-the-road trucking is going away. Fewer people will be having to drive trains. If you look at even jobs that used to require a lot of people, bridge building, there are now robots that are building bridges and laying tracks and that kind of thing. So we're gonna have to figure out work in the next decade. That's something we're gonna be doing some research on here, and we're gonna have to figure out how to approach that ethically um, and how to and empathetically. Work isn't just about earning money; it's about sense of purpose. Here are the other things I want to talk about briefly before we wrap up this episode. One is listen with your ears and interpret with your brain. Don't ascribe beliefs to somebody without speaking to them first. Don't tell me what I believe without asking, or without me having told you. If you think I believe something because I fall into a category, you might be wrong. And if you're doing that, then frankly, you're an asshole and your arguments are weak. The other thing is, speak to people like they're people. We get on social media and we talk about those guys, and we talk about the other, and you can't talk to those people. Well, have you tried? Actually sit down and have a conversation. Don't spit out something that you heard on the news. Don't spit out stuff that you heard on Facebook. Ask about it if you think it might be true. If you're not sure about it, if it upsets you, go find those people. A lot of the times those are the people that you're actually having your pants dry cleaned by. Just we're allowed to disagree. We don't all have to be the same to be human, and that's what we want to do here. We want to have conversations. Listen to people you disagree with. kind of get their viewpoint, understand where there is a diversity of viewpoints, and that's one of the things that makes this world great. And it's one of the things that makes this country beautiful, is that we can have a diversity of viewpoints and still live side by side and thrive side by side. And as I said earlier in the episode, there's not a finite amount of awesome in the world. Just you and me, we can be totally different, but we can be happy for each other's success. We can be happy that we each have love in our lives. You know, that's how that's how we become better humans. Have a great day. Have a great week. Be who you are, be who you will to be. And we will see you next time.